Howdy Meeps, welcome to the Meeple Syrup Show. Hey there Meeps, it is Wednesday night and we're here live on Meeple Syrup with our special guest, Julie Ahern. Is that how we pronounce that?
Yeah, if you're in Ireland, it's Ahern, but we're not, so it's cool.
Ahern. I will do my best to pronounce it that way from now on. And if I don't, you can slap me.
Well, I'm not in Ireland either. I think it's okay.
She's not gonna slap you, son. It's fine.
Okay.
No.
And Erica, of course, is with us, but Jessie is not. Where's Jess?
No, Jessie's moving back to Canada.
Yeah. So we'll have Jesse back in Canada within the next couple of weeks. I think he may be on for the next show, but may not be. But definitely he will be with us for Proto-TO.
Yes.
So Proto-TO is happening next Friday.
End of the
Wow.
month. Yeah. Oh my God, it's only 2 weeks away. You're correct.
Yeah.
This
Well, it's
week's
less
up,
than 2
eh?
weeks away. It's like 10 days away. And
we have
I
work
guess,
to do.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do, apparently. And Jesse will be there for our live streaming. So we will be live streaming all weekend long as much as we can and having guests come up to the table and show us their wares. They're going to maybe give us a demo, maybe go through their sell sheet, all sorts of stuff. All the new designers that you've never heard of but are awesome because they're, Canadian. So that makes them good, right? So no, it really doesn't. But it's a definite plus to work with
Step
Canadians.
up.
Yeah.
We'll come up and they'll be like, please, will you look at my components?
Yeah, without the British accent. But yeah.
They were like little kids from Charles Dickens novel.
Yeah.
Please, will you look
No,
at my
it's totally going to be like that. It's going to be amazing.
Will you play my prototype?
Yeah,
Yes.
once more. So Julie is our special guest tonight. And Julie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm from Massachusetts, which is where our company, Greenbriar Games, is based out of. But I'm kind of a nomad at this point because I go to so many conventions. And I started when I was, 5 and redesigned Candyland because I thought it was terrible and didn't want my sister subjected to it.
Oh, we want to hear more about this later.
Okay. And I've always designed games. I have prototypes from middle school. At that point I've been playing D&D since the 4th grade. So by middle school, I was making my own maps and games that were trying to incorporate mostly algebra, I think, to try to do advanced math to figure out gameplay, which is not the best thing to do, but I was entertained, I guess. And then later on, when I got to grad school and I was getting my master's in education, my dissertation was how to incorporate board games and gameplay into teaching to reach exceptional populations. So those kids who need to be challenged more because they're bored in class, and the kids who have a harder time because they're for a variety of reasons, attention, not being able to sit in their seat, that type of thing. So that was my dissertation. And of course, so when I was hired, they were like, hey, so you wrote all this really cool stuff, apply it in class. And so I ended up designing a lot of games for the classroom for a number of years before Greenbriar Games started.
That's amazing. I actually didn't know that.
I was going to say, you need to share these things because would use this
when we
now.
did in January, when we were at Board Game Base Camp, when you said who wants to play test my RPG, and I was like, I am actually I feel like I'm very qualified for this. That was why, because I've written a number of elementary school level RPGs and LARPs.
That's awesome.
When I was teaching 3rd and 4th grade.
We need to talk more about that because I need to start doing more of that with my students.
I will totally send you stuff.
Let's talk about that in a second or two.
Yes.
Okay.
But also, I don't think any of us realized you were an educator originally.
I think I knew that once upon a time, but Julie just does everything. So, you just assume she can do all of it anyway.
So, let's segue from that. That's a really good segue. Currently, what kind of hats are you wearing for Greenbriar Games?
Well, we've always been a small company, and we, have stayed pretty lean. And so I wear a lot of them, but primarily as the vice president, I do a lot of the sales and marketing, but then I do game development. And I still get to do a little bit of design, but it's more pieces of it at this point. Right. So for example, for Folklore, we have Twin Fire Games are the designers, but I get to have, for example, in the upcoming, the new expansion, we'd like to do at least a couple different new mechanisms for each expansion. And we added town events, which was based on concepts that I had given to the design team and have developed. So
right.
I still get to do a little bit of that, but then then there's a lot of writing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of writing.
Yeah.
So
you enjoy the writing?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do enjoy the writing. There are some days I feel it's okay. So as a writer and somebody who's done writing, a lot of writing my whole life, you have it's a very different mindset than deving a game or working on the math or going around to conventions. So finding the quiet time for me is the biggest challenge because I don't sleep a lot. I've never slept a lot. And as a teacher, I don't know if that's your thing either, but like that was right. So I pretty much survive on 5, maybe 6 hours of sleep, sometimes 4. Like that's pretty normal for me. It always has been, which is great because what I do is I sleep for about 3 hours and then I'm awake for about 2 or 3 hours. And that's when I write. And then I sleep again. And then I do my regular work day.
Yeah.
And if I don't wake up, I don't know if I will get writing in that day. And that's hard. But having that consistency is something that I don't know if I don't advocate it for anybody, but it totally works for me.
No, you have to write every day. And if it's waking up for 3 hours in the middle of the night.
Told my students this today that this is why I'm short. Is because I only sleep about 4 hours a day. And you're also pretty short too. So maybe it's lack of sleep.
I don't know. Sure, let's go with that. I mean, I'm okay with my height. I'm good.
Does that mean I got more sleep than you guys? So I'm bigger than both of you.
Possibly.
Oh, somebody asked if I was going to Base Camp 2020.
Have
the invitations gone out yet?
No, it probably will be October. My guess is. Daryl will throw those out, but if you've been before, you're usually invited back. And so T is saying, will you be there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I called dibs on that like months ago.
All right,
so
Daryl.
I suddenly got really nervous. Like, wait a minute.
Hang on a second. T, you're with Daryl. Go tell Daryl that Julie says yes and give her dibs on a room.
That's right. Yeah. There you go. Cool. So I'm going to just go down the list and see who's here already. So Manolis is here. Manolis is the co-designer of the game Shobu that just came out from Smirk and Dagger, Smirk and Laughter, right? And
I played it this past weekend for the first time, and it was.
And what'd you think? Yeah,
right. It was my best moment of the whole weekend.
Oh, that's so nice to hear.
I literally
Alliance game.
Yeah, and we were playing, and I said, "Listen, I have a copy at home, and I want to play it with the kids, especially the 8-year-old, because he loves patterns." And Kurt was like, it was like the end of the night. It was because they do the 8 to midnight retailer game night. And so it was like 11:45. He's like, yeah, sit down. We're good here. So we played it, and everybody's watching us because it's very much that chess. Like, I know people have said that, and I love chess. And so it was very quiet and very intense. And then suddenly I started giggling maniacally, and he's like, "That's evil." I was like, "I know," because I know that I had won.
And good, because you could see a few moves ahead that he.
I loved it. It was it's elegant. It's delightful. Sorry, continue on. Who else is there? I'm so excited.
That was discovered at Proto.do last year around this time.
Ooh.
So that's a big ringing plug for Pam Wall's prototype convention, and of course for Manny and Jamie, who did a great job on such a simple, elegant design, and then Kurt for being willing to take a risk as a small company on an abstract. So that was great.
Yeah,
Hi to
actually, you
Zach
know what?
Connolly.
Let's say quick shout out then, because for ProTO, because there's even more publishers coming this year. We'll
Right,
save the list for like next week or something like that. But if you're listening today or watching today and you are interested at the end of end of September, showing something you're working on, there are people there to look at them. And for a lot of people, that's maybe your first chance. Don't be afraid. There are people like Julie, who's awesome and interested in seeing your thing because, you know, they appreciate you put the work in. And it's just good to get to know and to talk to these lovely people. So just a really quick shout out again for ProTO. But we'll tell you, let's say next week, we'll go through the publisher list.
Right. And maybe Julie's not there this year, but hopefully someday.
Maybe next year.
Hopefully someday. We'd love to have you up. Also, Zach Connolly is watching right now. Hi, Zach. Zach is one of our moderators on the Shop Talk page. He also has a Kickstarter on right now for Lots, which, if you are a teacher, is an amazing game for teaching a lot of things about math and spatial relations and all that kind of stuff. So there we go.
Science, it's structures and all kinds of different things that could work on elementary levels as well.
Yeah, tease up, and he is in Halifax right now for
Nova. What is it?
Supernova.
Supernova.
Yeah, Supernova, which is a invite-only event out in Halifax, which is wonderful. I haven't been yet because it's in this teaching period of my life, right? So that happens. And Jim Baker's there. Jim is another Canadian designer from around Montreal, and he's going to have a game coming out soon, which is wonderful. So lots of great people. Jesse Fernandez,
so many people having games coming out.
Brad Batchelor's
awesome.
here. A lot of people saying that they're happy to have us back, and we're happy to be here. Thanks so much to our supporters. Thanks so much to people who supported us over the summer on Patreon. And just as a note, if you are on Patreon, remember there are those wonderful patron-only podcasts that we do there.
Our community episodes you're talking about?
There.
Oh, the bonus material from
bonus material.
Okay.
Even more bonus material there.
Gotcha.
So cool. Let's get back to Julie because she's the reason for the season. And Julie, tell us a little bit about how you used to use games in the classroom, and where was the transition from, classroom teaching to what you're doing now?
Well, okay, so in a variety of different ways, but so my first teaching job was in Newport News, Virginia, where it was a school that was like right by the shipyards. And I don't know if this is significant and has any significance in Canada, but it's so a Title I school is one where students receive free or reduced lunch and or breakfast.
Right.
And our school was like 97, 98% Title I.
Right.
To give you an indication of socioeconomic background. So we were the very bottom of the district in testing and like ranking of any kind. And they were kind of at wit's end when I was hired of having any way of changing that. So what they had done is they had brought in a group of teachers, like veterans that were 25, 30-year veterans who were saying, if you come in and you teach for 2 years and you bring up this test scores and everything, you can then go on and pick anywhere you want to go, any school. If you want to go into admin, whatever, you get to choose. And so they did that, and they kind of brought up the test scores, and then they all left, and they were like, okay, brand new teachers, come on in. So it was my first year teaching.
That's a lot.
As it was for everybody in our grade, third grade.
Right.
And the state had stepped in and said, it seems like what you're doing is shady here. We're going to also investigate. So they were desperate. And they're like, anybody have any ideas? And I was like, well, I spent all this time writing this dissertation. Do you want to give gaming a try? And they were like, yeah, whatever, just do something. So I actually had my friend Kate. So Kate and I played board games all the time as well. So we started making, and a lot of it was for rote memorization because it was test prep, but we tried to do it in as many different hands-on ways. So if it was going to be, so we had a giant like Olympic, we called it the Olympics, where there were different events, which were of course the different subjects, where you had to do a lot of like with flashcards, repetition of things, but like there were some that were reading comprehension, and I could give you all of them, but trying to get things where maybe it's building something so that it's hands-on. Sometimes it's incorporating it in a board game format of almost a roll and move type of thing. We go from really basic and simple because these were kids who had never gotten to play board games before.
Right.
And to level it up to become more complex. And then, of course, they could get to turn around and build their own, to have the students use their own games as they got further on. And so it started as simple as that, as basically roll and move and try to do flashcards. And it branched out from there. And I think maybe my second or third year was when I started being like, I think D&D and LARPing might be better. Like you do.
Awesome.
Like you do. Or like RPGs. And so because the school wasn't being given the funds for things. So like the Oregon Trail, everybody's played the Oregon Trail. We now have a game that's based on the video game.
Yeah.
Right.
No, there's now a game based on the game based on the video game.
The game, right. They had no money for any of that. So I made an RPG because we couldn't
that's what
like same concepts. Right. Yeah. So I could afford me. So the reading material, the reading material were the books that I got at the library to start before I wrote my own, what sickness was, so that before you died of dysentery, like you had to learn about it and then you could do these things. And it was like at some point we were out at recess and there's this huddle of kids and they're all talking intensely and nobody's fighting and nobody's yelling, but it seems very intense. And the teacher's like, what do you, like another teacher went running over because they were afraid like there was some sort of potential violence going to happen and break out, which was real. I mean, it was, that could have happened at this school. And they were like, what are you doing? And they're like, he has 2 ox and I need one to go over the Rockies and he won't trade it for the grain I have. He wants more. And it is an unfair barter. And I'm like, she was like, I don't even know what you're saying. I'm like, I won. This is it.
I mean, hopefully
I am good. So yeah, we did that. I think when I moved to Massachusetts again, and I was teaching here for a while, and I was closer to Boston. It was a very diverse. You had kids coming from a lot of different backgrounds. So you had recent transplants from Haiti because that was right after the hurricane.
Yes. Yeah.
And kids who had been, like my family, several generations Irish and Italian Catholic. You had I had students who had come from Nova Scotia. I had kids from lots of different places who didn't all have the same background, and it was the same. But I felt like there was a good conversation there, so we did an Ellis Island LARP every year.
Nice.
I'd love to hear more about that at some point.
Oh, yeah.
So and it was great because I would ask parents and older siblings and grandparents to come in and help out, and so we would learn about it and do like family histories and try to bring in as much of their background as possible from all the different cultures. And then once they had talked about it and we had read about it, they would have to go through and be processed at Ellis Island. And of course, inevitably, I'd have several grandparents or parents who had multiple languages that they knew. And so I would pull them in and be like, look, you are a disgruntled government employee. These are not your children. These are just the people you have to, you are like, think DMV worker. You are
just churn them through.
You're motive, right.
Right.
You don't care what their concerns are. And then I want you and you to talk to them, not in English. And when they don't understand you, sigh, roll your eyes, repeat what you said, but slower and louder and more annoyed. And this was the whole process. And by the end, a little stressful for the kids, but at the end, they really got like the understanding of like why it was like scary without like a full, like, you know, you could always, and that was, you know, like if they started, they always had the ability to be like, I'm not happy right now. I'm not comfortable.
Right.
And like go like hang out and chill out. And typically they were fine, but yeah, some of them, it was like, that was really scary. And I was like, yes, that was your grandfather. They were like, yeah, I know, but it was really
that's
scary.
really good for empathy. Like that would be a huge, from the because you're not guessing necessarily the whole experience, but even like the slightest inkling of like understanding, that is a huge step for empathy. And so that's such a big lesson.
And that's why you wanted to play my game.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
Robert,
it progressed to that point.
Yeah. I think, Robert, you said, I'm happy I played the game. I never want to play it again. Was it you who said that? And
what's fascinating though is everybody who is there playing, when we see each other at other conventions, we have this really, I don't know, kind of special bond because we were a family together for a very intense short period of time.
You experience something intensely, your brain is going to build that memory, right? And
that is how you bond. Like you can create superficial bonds with somebody purely by having some sort of event that is deemed either highly stressful or something like that.
Yeah, adversity
can create incredibly huge bonds with people.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So bringing this back to your current projects, I noticed that you've just finished working and they're doing the writing for Folklore. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing on Folklore and why so much writing?
So Folklore, The Affliction is a RPG style tabletop game where, so you have a preset character and you're going on adventures, and as you level up, everything's card based for leveling up items and abilities and all of that stuff. So all of those, not as much flavor text, but still quite a bit of writing. And then instead of having a GM, you have the stories, which have multiple outcomes. So if you're playing, you might have to do a skill check or come to a group consensus, or there's a combat that happens. And the result of it is jump to a different part of the story, like a choose your adventure, or read a story moment at the back, which might be one person gets to read it and it's hidden information for everybody else, or maybe everybody gets to share it with just one piece. Or you get a story marker. Here's the blue story marker. Don't worry about it. We'll tell you what that's about later.
So later, if you have blue story marker, then X.
Right. Cool. Right. And then of course, like if you have the yellow story marker, what happened? Where was the yellow story marker? I never had it. So there's a lot of that, which the team at Twin Fire Games does the main story arcs. I have done a lot of the support writing, so ongoing, like once an expansion or once the core game was released, once the expansion was released, I will do one shots for retailers or release to fans, and then I've gotten to do a lot of the side quests. Is what it comes down to, the mini ones. But even that, so. It's not a ton of writing, but it's a very intense amount of writing because you're incorporating, you're trying to compact a lot of the mechanisms of the game into a poker card, double-sided, and give a full experience of going on a side quest. So it's not a full story, but you still want an arc of some kind with a resolution, and get it all onto a card. And then make a deck of those.
Did you guys have a process to whittle that down? Because that is a really difficult thing to translate that much story or that much instruction onto something that is that small.
Correct. So there is some level of formula to it where, you know, and the fun part about this particular expansion was we incorporated a lot of our friends because we did a social stretch goal of getting a lot of people in the community to be the NPCs for each card. Mm-hmm. So I think, let's see, Isaac was my favorite because, you know, Isaac's, just designer of Gloomhaven. And so a lot of people are constantly saying, so how does this compare to Gloomhaven? And I'm like, it doesn't. It's not this, but you get it all the time. So the fact that he was willing to actually be an NPC for one of this was great.
Aww.
But also, I told him he was going to be a doctor. So he took a picture holding the rumor card with like a lab coat, even though it's like medievally times and everything. He wore a doctor, like a lab coat, like he was a doctor for like showing that he was on it, which was like the sweetest. Honestly, it's like one of the nicest, sweetest things that anybody's ever done. But Daryl is on one of them. I actually believe that you make an appearance as well, Eric. You might not know that.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yay.
I might not have told you that. You might make an appearance. You might have made an appearance.
I'm in a game.
Yeah. So an NPC gives you that there is a problem in some location and you have to travel to it typically, or there's some way to get to the next step. And then once you get to the next step, there's a variety of different, at that point it's, again, do you just have to roll and do a skill check, or is there a randomized 1 out of 10 and the number will tell you what the next thing is? So we have a couple different choices of how to get to the next piece, but typically then there's something there's a smaller, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, so now there is this data bank of monsters. There's a data bank of skill checks, and and I want to make sure that I randomize it and have enough of them used so that no one character feels like, well, they never did an ecology check ever. And I've got the woodsman who's all about ecology. What the heck, guys? You have to make sure that it's, so there's a lot of that. So I do a lot of spreadsheet, and then I'm like, okay, now make it thematic. And that's the hard part, because at that point I'm like, I just see spreadsheet and I'm like, no, now I have to I have to listen to music and I have to get in the
now
mood.
these have to be people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All these numbers have to become something that's meaningful.
And I thought it would be easier having all my friends be a part of it. It actually made it harder because I'm like, I don't want to misrepresent them.
That would be hard.
It actually made it
I
harder.
made you weak.
Right.
While you're
It's
drinking
okay.
water,
You can make me weak. It's fine.
Mike is asking you to go for root beer in Essen.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, let's just say, is he going to invite me and then I'm going to show up as he's walking out the door? Because
that's what happens.
Essen.
Oh,
that's what happens at
like
Essen with Mike. I'm just saying.
Just saying, Mike.
Maybe it's his way of making amends. He's offering. I'm going to infer from this because it says root beer in Essen. I'm inferring he's going to buy you one to make up for it.
Oh, you heard it here first, people.
Sorry, Mike, if I'm wrong, but
is going to buy root beer for Julie.
It's just a root beer. You can do it.
Yeah, totally just a root beer. Root beer's awesome. So, speaking of delicious sweet things, why is there creme brulee as a food icon in Zpocalypse? Why is it Zpocalypse or is it Zpocalypse?
You said
either,
right?
Oh. Yeah.
I say Zpocalypse because I'm United
American.
States.
Yeah.
American. But I hear Zpocalypse all the time as well.
Okay, good.
So I forgot I had told you that part. So our first game, we zombie survival, and so we incorporated a lot more than at that point all the games only were combat based, and we wanted to incorporate more things. So we did feeding and fortification, tower of defense stuff. But so if you didn't feed your survivors, they would not do anything for you. They would sit and languish in the bunker and be cranky and despondent and emo and stuff. So you had to feed them.
Feed those emo kids, baby.
Right. And, you had irradiated food and you had good food, and that was it.
See, yeah.
So you had the icons for those two things. But during our first Kickstarter, right before we hit go, so before I could change, one of the people in our group, so and this is when we first started. So there was a lot of our the people who were in the company, but there was also a lot of our friends who we played games with who had a lot more input in that first game than than when we became incorporated. So a lot more access to doing things, which was silly and fun and would never ever fly at this point in the company. And what had happened was a couple months previous, we would do a dinner every other month, like a formal, like everybody got together and we would cook. And one of our friends was the head chef every time. And often I would be a sous chef because I like cooking, but I didn't need to be the person in charge. And he had decided he was going to do a full formal like French dinner. So he had made, and it was beautiful and it was lovely. And there was duck and I can't like, it was a lot of time and effort and probably money spent on this beautiful dinner. And he doesn't like making dessert. So he told me, well, you can do dessert. And I was like, well, I'm going to make creme brulee because it's got sugar and dairy and fire. And I'm American and I don't know anything else. So that's what we're doing. So I made it. And of course, nobody commented everybody's like, oh, the dinner's nice. But all they talked about was this creme brulee and he was bitter. He was very bitter.
Okay.
That's not your fault. That's not your fault.
It was not my fault. I didn't know. I just know what a crowd pleaser is. And that's why I'm doing marketing now. So I did it. And then right before we went to Kickstarter, he added that there was a level and for like $1,000, you would get the game and a portion of it would go towards travel to come visit us and we'd play the game with you and we'd have a dinner in your honor and Julie would make you creme brulee.
Oh, hilarious.
And somebody backed up. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. And did they like your creme brulee?
They thought it was great. Well, this is the thing. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is so unprofessional. Why would we do that? Da, da, da. Guy who backed it was like, I was on the fence, but creme brulee is my favorite dessert.
Oh my God.
That was his message.
If you still know who that person is,
he's in the game. He's one of the characters. He's
awesome.
the senator in the original game.
If you look on my Facebook page, I just posted a recipe for creme brulee cheesecake. So he made like that too.
I would eat those two things.
So all that happens and everybody thinks it's hilarious. And I was like exasperated, but hey, it worked. So we get to the point right before production and Jeff's like, okay, we all have to sign off on everything. And I was like, I've looked through everything. He's like, no, we have to sign off on everything. I'm like, Jeff, I've looked at everything. What do you want? I'm not going to sign off on the miniatures. I don't do the plastics and everything. He's like, no, you have to look at all the cards. I'm like, I looked at all the cards. He's like, all the cards, Julie. I'm like, all right, okay. Like I've looked at everything. He's like, you haven't looked at like the items and food. I'm like, if you misspelled food, we're in trouble. He's like, I just need you to sign off on all the cards. So I'm going through and it's like, food, scrap, it's really basic stuff. And then I get to creme brulee and I was like, you guys are the literal worst. So yes, there's a creme brulee card.
Because
it makes no sense.
You approved it.
When there's the apocalypse, you must have creme brulee.
You must have creme brulee.
Right. So there was a Doctor Who episode like years later where that happens. And I was like, what's going on? What alternate reality?
Creme brulee.
It's the real world.
It's all about the creme brulee.
So those are two of the biggest products that two of the biggest lines, I guess, that Greenbriar does, right? So Folklore and Zipocalypse.
Zipocalypse, it's our first game and we've done several iterations. I don't know if it's our biggest, but it's certainly our flagship and it's one that we will always do because it's ours.
Yeah.
It's the one that we first designed and the one we continue to in-house design.
Right.
And then, but I would say Folklore is probably much bigger and Grimslingers is also done really well.
Right. I forgot that you guys did Grimslingers as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know that he lives in my hometown, right, Stephen?
Yeah.
Gibson? Yeah.
I did know that.
Yeah. It's very funny. He didn't originally, but then he moved to London for some weird reason. Like he was up more in the Toronto area. But yeah, so there's a little connection there too.
I was going to add, Julie, because this kind of sounds like you're kind of playing both sides of the fence right now. I'm not sure how many other people as well that work where you do this. Do you guys find that you might be swinging more towards internal, in-house, kind of in design, or do you think you're still going to be continuing looking more external? Because I'm kind of hearing both happening at the same time.
Yes, both happen at the same time. I just noticed, for example, that Christopher Chung has joined us.
He
and we
just
have one
jumped
of
in.
his designs.
Oh, you're looking at one of Chris's? Good.
Oh, we signed it. We have it.
Oh, even better.
So, no, we do both. And mostly, I would say, with the exception of Apocalypse, it's external, and we do mostly development at this point.
Okay.
Which is because as time has gone on, we have less and less time when we tend to go more towards the publishing side, which is funny because I find that I will get a design started, but then I have nobody to hand it off to do dev work to.
Because that's
like internally in the company. Right. So I have designs that are just kind of sitting here, but
are you
they're also
allowed
not-
to shop them to other places? Is that a thing?
Well, I am allowed to shop them because I am the vice president of the company, and I would love
to
have Jeff try to tell me not to. But
we could have Julie designs under different headers.
We could, and if I could ever get somebody to look at them and have the time to play test them, which never happens because then I prioritize the games that I know are going to make me money.
Right.
Those are the ones that potentially may make me money, but really are just going to give me personal satisfaction.
Right.
Which is also very good, but don't keep me in food. And
no, this is a very real dilemma. Yeah.
There are external developers. If you would ever like to hire them, they
Sen's saying this right now.
Hey.
Well, I'm sure
Sen's like pointing lights at himself and like landing.
Yeah.
You know a lot of people who would do external development for you is all I'm saying.
I know. And that's an excellent point.
It is an excellent point.
Julie Designs 2020.
Yeah. What's next for Greenbriar and Julie?
Well, so we have a game that we need to finish with Christopher that is a 2-player how do I want to describe this? It's so you are either the serial killer or you are the police.
Oh, right.
So I know, right?
You know this.
That started off more with a CSI vibe to it when it was given to us, and I have kind of stylistically started and artistically pushed it towards more of a almost Sin City comic book feel. But either way, just a little. That we're trying to finish. The Mystery game I have got to. So we had in my mind finished it, and then I realized that it's a game based on the horror comic Mystery and Nightmare World, which are both titles by Dirk Manning, and they are both in the same universe of this. What if all of our horror tropes were real?
Right.
Precedent. So it's it combines both of them, and it's a one versus many, the one being the hero, the many being the villains game. And I loved it, and it was great, and I was done. And then I realized that it's a game that we were trying to break into the comic book industry more of, and it's too challenging. It's too many layers, and I have to I enjoy it very much, but it had too many extra bells and whistles on it, and I needed to strip it back down and take it to a much simpler gameplay to get my target audience. So is just about finished. So I also have been talking to, because the one other thing I need is a graphic designer.
Right.
Hey, shout out graphic designers.
I need a graphic designer. I keep talking to people who are like, yeah, I have availability, and they don't. And I just need a graphic. I need one now.
Put it up on Shop Talk and see if they say, like, I need someone now. Like, there's quite a number of good ones in there alone, let alone people who will recommend.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I will, because I have all the art, because all the artists from the original comics did the art. So the art is done. Design is
You just need to
good.
lay it all
I'm
out.
happy. I just need it to look clean and
In a nice package.
yep. So
Excellent.
that's just about done. And then Walter Barber, and Ian Van Ness, who worked on Champions of Hara and Barbarian Battlegrounds, have just sent me the expansion to Barbarian Battlegrounds. So I'll be deving that as well.
Fun.
Nice.
Fun. So Jesse Fernandez is asking, is the game that Chris has sent to you, A, is there a title for it so we can refer to it as something? And B, is it a social deduction game or is it like a logic and deduction game? The serial killer.
So we're calling it On the Run as a working title, but we still haven't decided on a final title. It's part of the problem. So it would be. So I'll describe it to you, and then we'll figure out what we want to call that. So you are, as the serial killer, trying to make kills by placing a location, a weapon, and a characteristic out on the board of a person.
Okay, got it.
Of the same color. So 3 of a kind. And if you do that, then you have successfully made a kill. So you are trying to make 7 of them, but you're doing it within a grid. So you are building the board, as it were. The cops, the police, what have you, are that yes, you did suggest before 7, but I don't want to allude to
Chris is
something
writing before 7 right now.
Right. So as the more that the serial killer is able to make kills, the more abilities the police have to eliminate because it's an elimination. So think like in Clue, you're eliminating a number of suspects or characteristics or weapons or what have you to get to the final 3, whatever's in the envelope, much like Clue. But with a much more varied and complex grid of potential combinations. So the more kills happen, the more abilities the cops have to narrow down what they are. So what do we want to call that?
It's almost like set collection meets like some sort of speed game meets like speed sex collection. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah,
Killers by colors. Nice. So
Yeah.
And it's great because so we've been playing it and I'm really happy about it, Chris. Because
Chris, it's fine. It's good.
It was engaging, but at the same time, there was a lot that you were looking at. It's 2 players, and you were spending a lot of time looking at your own hand to decide your next move. And I was like, the one thing that I would like is I want it to move more towards the board, which is you're making the board as you go. And so there's a lot. That was the change, the feedback from my dev work that the designer took and did an awesome job at fixing. So.
Good job, Chris. Good job.
And guys, this is why we need developers, because it's really important.
Yeah, developing is a huge thing, and Julie's doing great work on her product line for that as well. When a developer gets a hold of something and can, it's almost like just like icing on top. But without it, it would be kind of, like it's an okay cake.
Yeah.
But when the icing gets on top, bam! Lots of food references.
Make it pretty.
Yeah. Apparently.
Yeah. And hi to Brian Lenz, by the way.
Hi, Brian.
Grand Con, which was great times. We had a good time. Julie and I were there.
We did have a good time.
Yeah. So that's what's coming up next for you guys. So maybe before 7. We're not sure what it's going to be called, but it'll be good. It'll be fun. And that game is a 2-player only, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you want people to submit names in any way, or do you have them narrowed down yourself?
I don't have them narrowed down. If somebody wants to submit a name, I'm
welcome
to anything right now.
We're working on this ourselves because we have no sign off for the show. So we've been letting people kind of help us out. So if you're going to post in Shop Talk to say, hey, I need someone to do some art for me,
I just did that for you, but you can also ask for the name.
Just did it. You can put another one up saying, what would you maybe call this game? They're clever people in that group.
Yeah,
I
I know a lot of them.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
killers by colors. There's something there. There's something there. I like the alliteration. Alliteration could be your friend. I'm Mike Eckert. Mike Eckert is another con organizer. We just have Grand Con coming, and here's Kubla Con coming in. Daniel, we just went through the game. Daniel Zayas is asking, what's the game?
Daniel,
You're gonna
rewind.
have to rewatch it
Rewind.
and then get back to me.
Daniel's like, I name things all the time.
I know you do.
Does.
It's true.
Guys are being criticized.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're being criticized.
We are talking about an upcoming game that Julie's putting out through Greenbriar that is Chris Chung's game that is nameless. And we were just saying, how do you think people might go about helping to name the game? There. Is that good? Is that good?
Yeah.
synopsis?
That was very good.
That's a good synopsis.
Okay.
Julie, I'd like to thank you, by the way. Julie plays a lot of my RPGs at cons for some reason. I don't know why. But I really wanted to thank you for being willing to play a game that I came up with the night before I went to the con.
Don't admit to that, Sen.
No, it's true. I don't mind saying that. Also, I love it that people will actually give me the time of day and play those games with me. So thank you very much for that. Julie played a game with me called Exquisite Corpse, which was the drawing game. And it's ridiculous.
She says the best.
No,
Let's hear.
it's so good, though. It brought me so much joy.
Yeah.
And now I'm not going to, I have the
I know you
still.
do.
I'm so happy.
And so I think that's one of the greatest things about this industry is, it is hard to get in, I will admit. But once you're part of the industry, then people are just really willing to give you time and spend time with you and go with your games and go through your games and give you feedback on those things. So I think there's a lot to say about getting out to conventions, seeing Mike Eckert and Brian Lentz here, and getting out there and meeting up with people who you are, interested in getting to know as a person and building those relationships through playing games, right? So, excuse me. Brian's saying he saw that and it looked hilarious because it was silly.
It was
silly, good, silly fun. So yeah, that's, I guess, a piece of advice for all the designers that are listening who are trying to do their best. And I know there are barriers to getting to conventions, and I know, excuse me.
Don't die.
You got this. You got this, Sen. Grab that.
I'd like to hand you my water, but it was.
Grab that puffer.
No, I don't have my puffer near me, so.
Okay, take a deep breath, or I can try to finish your thought if possible.
No, it's okay. I'm good now.
Okay.
I just wanted to tell people to get to conventions if you can. So mentorship is a big deal, I think, in game design.
Yes.
And it's not formal, but there's definitely people, even in the chat right now, that, we've helped. And we don't do it for glory. We just like helping people. And it's really nice to see people being successful. And I know Julie's like that as well. Julie's that kind of giving person who would help you if you come up with a game.
Julie, are you on our Shop Talk yet? If you're not on Shop Talk, you gotta join.
I feel like now that the third time that you brought it up, if I'm not, I absolutely better be.
Julie is a member of Shop Talk. I don't
think I can
ever repost it.
You can repost.
I don't think I've either. But now that you've brought up two things that
you can do on it. And
well, here, I'm going to see if I can add.
Yes, but you know what? This is a big point, and we brought it up
already a member. There
you go. It is really hard to get to conventions, but if you can just get to that somewhat local prototyping thing wherever it is, even if it's a game meetup that you go a few times, play a few games, and just ask, hey, next time would you play one of mine? All of that is a huge factor in kind of getting going, even if it's there's not a lot of people around you. So it doesn't have to be the expensive ones.
And you can reach
right.
people online
absolutely
too.
Doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
What I've found interesting that I've started noticing as of late, when you first start, you have your one game. And so you have your one.
We say it's your baby.
Right. Well, we say,
You're the
but
baby.
even at that, think like your world, or like, so when you're a kid, your worldview is your home, and then it
Yeah.
becomes your street, and then it becomes your neighborhood, and then it becomes, like you start, well, it's the same kind of, like a new designer, their game is this. And then so it's really hard to give up this and hand it to somebody else. And when it, once you expand and you realize there are other games, and this person has a game and I have multiple games or ideas for games, and it's a much more fluid thing. It's much easier to just be like, here, tell me what you think, and receive it, than when it's like everything is just it's all hinging on the one. And I love trying to help people get to not necessarily even shaping that one, but what's your next game, to get them to realize,
there's more.
Oh, yes. Like, so it's, to me, that's, I've stopped being like, let me help you with this first game, and really being like, okay, so what else are you interested in? And because let's face it, most of your times, your first game is like the burnt pancake too. It's really hard to, like, you make, like, myself included, like that first game is also all the things that you didn't know that you were doing that everybody else has done, or you're so attached to this one thing, you're afraid to let it go. Whereas that second one, now that you've got that out of your system, tends to be the one where you start to realize what your process is, what you're like. It's a much more, you're not focusing on the thing, and you're focusing on what you are doing as a person to create something. Yeah. And so I love talking to people about, what's your second game?
Yeah, that's a really, really cool piece of advice, Julie.
I will say the first game, you know what? You're lucky if it functions. That's a good sign. Right. And then it really is, like, even if it's flat, as long as it's flat and functional, that is a great start. Then throw it away and pick up something new.
Right. No, and that is, you know what? I've never ever heard anybody put it that way, Julie, but I know Eric and I have talked about, your second design is the one you should really kind of focus on. Your first one, maybe bloated, but it's your baby, so you're not going to touch it. And so it's the second one. But I've never heard anybody from the other side of the fence, like from the publisher side of the fence, ask that question. I think it's a wonderful question to ask, especially for first-time designers, right? So what is your next thing? This may not be for me, but what are you doing next, right?
Right. And I've published people's first games. Walter and Ian, so Leaf Pile Media's first game was Champions of Horror. Mm-hmm. And I love Champions of Horror. It went through so much development. And like over such a long period of time to get it to where we saw how it was going to be great, but to get it to that, because they were it was so important to them, and they spent so much time on it, which is both good and challenging, versus Barbarian Battlegrounds, which was like them slap happy, tired, and made a silly bear pun when they were working on Champions of Horror, which led to them giggling uncontrollably, which led to more bear puns, which led to a game which got like done in like a week. It was like this, like by comparison, like effortless. And seeing the difference of this very much more complex and very carefully constructed and maybe slightly overproduced.
Well, no, you're right though.
That's on me too.
Yeah, it's hard to tease out. Like when something's been so cared for, so done over, so played through, sometimes it's hard to tease out those pieces that might streamline it more, or maybe a small change. Like it is something to watch out for, even though sometimes lots of time can make something great. Sometimes it also makes it harder and harder to remove anything without maybe changing too much. And then you're kind of stuck.
So here's a question. First of all, I wanted to say that Daniel Zayas also gave a really, really good piece of advice. And I'm going to show it on the screen right now. He said, I like the guilt-free out, like play one turn, and if you hate it, we can move on. So giving...
For prototype playing?
Yeah. Giving anybody who you're testing with that out. So that's a really good piece of advice.
Daniel,
and then he asked... Oh, go ahead,
I was going to say, finish, give the question, but I had a really...
No. It's up to you. It's you. Go.
Illuminating experience going through, looking at, we went to a publisher's speed gaming, or, with both of us looking at designers, and I am at those, I'm brusque because it's that 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to sell me on something, as opposed to playing through where I'm like much more care and time and thought. Where I'm like, give me the highlights, and I'm not trying to be mean. I'm actually trying to, because a lot of them are new and don't know how to properly pitch a game.
So
I'm trying to lead them.
Highlights.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get them to give me the next. Whereas Daniel
you're
was
saving them from themselves.
Right. Whereas Daniel was a much more patient, like, this is so exciting. What I would like to do is give you some feedback right now about how maybe you could improve. And I'm like, we got 5 minutes. Get next one. And he wanted to like give them, he wanted them to not be crying. And I was like, I'm just next one. I'll come back, circle around at the end and be like, hey, let's talk about this. It was a really fun dynamic because it made me realize, be a little bit more self-aware of who is so nervous and how they might perceive my shortness as being dismissive or unappreciative of their efforts. So I just wanted to point that out.
That's another really good piece of advice, though, Julie, is that if you can take all the feedback from the people who you're talking to as they are trying to help you make your game better, life becomes a lot easier and there's a lot less hard feelings.
Right.
Yeah, I was also going to say, because it connects funnily to something you said to me, is without meaning to, we always approach whatever it is who we are, right? So I was just told today that I was like, someone was looking through a rule book that I was doing. They're like, you're too nice. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, you even write your rules too nice. I was like, what does that even mean? But it's true, because then like, that's how you approach things matters. It's how you're going to write. It's how you're going to talk to people. It's how you're going to approach play testing. It's how there's so much of that, but that's a huge awareness thing. That's super important to kind of lock down and say, am I too nice? Am I not nice enough? Am I like, where's that ground? What am I trying to get out of this? Like, as you said, like, what is the target audience? What am I trying to draw from that? And I think we forget sometimes which ones we are.
Mine is always, I'm same as when I was teaching. Short term seems a little mean or brusque. Long term, I think, has more impact and benefit to them. So
tough but fair.
Tough but fair. Right. I try. Yeah. So never, because I never ever, I'm like, wow, this is terrible. Because I would, even if I thought it, I would never say that, because who knows? It could one day be the most amazing game ever. And I'm just seeing it at the first iteration. That's not fair. And that's not what it's about. It's about sharing concepts, ideas. And for me, is it going to work with my company if I'm being pitched on it? Versus can I have feedback on something, which is a totally different thing and approach. And so but being mindful that a lot of people, it's their first time.
They're sensitive.
And they're right. And having been the person where it's my first time, I had the luxury of having a huge group of friends who could give feedback with love. And who would also, if I decided to have a temper tantrum about it, would be like, oh, that's our Julie. And, like be fine with it, versus being out in the public eye with people that I maybe knew, maybe didn't, giving me their thoughts.
Yeah.
Adam Young has a point that's really good. He said that people get lost in the fog, and you can front load the facts and be cozier and nice after. Right? Here's the facts. This isn't going to work for my company. This is, it's going to be a very expensive game to produce. Blah, 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 blah. Facts. And then, hey, I'm really interested in where you're going with this. And what do you think? And have you ever talked to this person? Because I think they might be into this game, right? So facts up front, cozy later. It's sort of like,
that's my jam.
Right? That's your jam. That's how I teach as well. So it's like, this is right. This is wrong. This is right. This is wrong. This is very factual. Now let's talk, right? And be human after that.
It's nice to point that out, because it's saying it's encouraging after the fact, because what we like to forget a lot of time is that this is art. Art is highly subjective. Art is also very particular to who's looking at it and what they're looking for. So when someone says no, most of the time they mean no for them, not no every person you're going to approach from now on out. But unfortunately, we interpret that wrong if they're not new. If we're new to this. So just remember, no is not a no. No is no for them.
Mhm.
But it might also mean take the feedback, think about what it means, and see how you might apply it to the next person. It's not a get out of this industry, you suck. Nobody's going to tell you that. Nobody means that.
That's right. It's just not a
Right.
game for them.
Yes.
So I have one question here before we sign off. Daniel Zayas asked, have you ever designed something so long and test it so long that the whole genre becomes stale to you, Julie? Like a worker placement that just won't go into the square peg, so now worker placement is dead to you.
So mechanism versus theme, because our theme, I mean, we have some very long running games. And I won't lie, I've broken down on occasion, been like, why zombies? Why did it have to be zombies? But it is. It is what we did.
Yeah.
It's what we did. And we're going to keep doing it. I've cycled past that. But
Mechanics, though?
mechanics.
Or mechanisms?
What have you? Short answer, no.
Okay.
So it's not that they get stale to me, because I can always find, there are certain things, you can always find new ways to use something. So I know that we had that whole conversation about roll and writes that I gave an example of at GrandCon that is currently in vogue. And so, designing a game that has that right now doesn't seem to make sense, because by the time it comes out, there's already a wealth of choices of that style. So but that doesn't mean that it's not interesting to me. It's that I don't know if I could. So that's, as a designer, no. As a publisher who's going to try to make money from it, yes, because I know trends in the market, even if it's the challenge is now make one that's better than everybody else's, there's still already a saturated market right now for it.
Right.
So even if I were, right, so the designer brain in me is like, challenge accepted. The publisher in me is like, shelve that challenge. So, wait 5 years, bring it back then. But do I want to spend my time doing that, or do I want to work on something else that I can publish sooner? So that's, when we talk about like the two hats, that's something that I would be at odds at. And no, I don't think that there's any particular mechanism I've ever gotten specifically sick of. There's some that I like better than others.
It's
that are my go-tos.
The theme burns you out a little bit over time, it sounds like.
Sure.
Right. Well, I mean, because we do ongoing, so, and it's not that it burns me out so much as, I mean, if you think about it, anybody who's written a series, when you live in that world long enough, you're like, okay, that world, you kind of feel like when it has a natural arc, you want it to end. Yeah. But you also, again, as a publisher, if it's making money and there's still people asking for more, it's so then how do you make it new to you again?
Right. Yeah.
What makes it exciting to you?
You can only write, and he lumbered towards me with his gaping jaw open, yelling brains so many times, right? So
turns out I can write it a lot of different ways.
Yeah, a lot of different ways.
That's what the stores
continue to do so,
guys.
Yeah.
Cool. But that's also why I appreciate community, because that is something that when I start to feel burnt out, I can be like, hey, where are some locations that we haven't ventured forth to, or what are some scenarios that you would like to see, or where, like, and
crowdsource that.
It's wonderful to have a community that, one, loves your game, so you get that that energy of reminding you of, oh no, people have enjoyment from playing this. Yes. And right. And then also so sometimes the well does run dry and you have to refresh. And sometimes that's going and watching movies or talking to other designers. And sometimes it's going to the fans and being like, hey, what would you like to see? And that's kind of, when we say on our Kickstarters, we appreciate our backers. I really do, because their contributions really do help.
Yeah.
Very cool. So it's
Awesome.
that time of night, Erica. Look at that.
Yeah, I know. I could talk to Julie forever.
Bedtime.
We
I
kind of need to
know.
get her to do a little exit. So we always like to leave off with one piece of advice that you'd like to give to people as your parting words, because we'd love to obviously have you on again sometime soon. But it was great to
Always.
kind of see all the things that you're working on. What would you either say to do, stop doing, recommend people do more of, or get, or whatever it is, as your sign-off advice?
My advice is always to feel your feelings completely and then be willing to let them go.
That's fair.
So-
We talk about killing your darlings sometimes. You gotta kind of have the extreme feelings and be able to get rid of them.
Right. But also this is the best thing ever. This is the worst thing ever. Feel it fully and let it go.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so much. Just on a note, remember that next week we are going to have Chris Rowlands and Kathleen Mercury on the show.
Yep. We're doing our Digging Deeper episode.
Yeah, we're going to look into how to get
keeping
over
it going.
stuff. Yeah.
Well, what is it? Just keep swimming. Just
keep swimming. That's right.
Keep swimming.
Unfortunately, Jesse won't be here next week, most likely, but he will be with us in a couple days after that when we're live streaming from Pro to TO. Again, get to that if you can.
Yes.
Wonderful convention.
If you have anything to show, go show it. They're great advice. Lots of great people there. Lots of published designers there. You'd be amazed how open and honest people are about giving advice and that kind of stuff. It's great.
Yeah, and the week after that, Jesse will be back, and Pam Walls, who is the organizer of Proto TO, will be on to give us a recap or a breakdown or whatever we're going to call it. I don't know.
Yeah. The hope was after the fact, because then we get to learn kind of what went right, what went wrong, how do you want to fix it? Like after the fact, you have a lot of hindsight on how things go. And usually I think it's more valuable advice for people who want to do it themselves.
Right, exactly. And on the Meeple Syrup Shop Talk page, please do sign up for that. And if you care about the show and want to see more content from us and listen to more content from us and help us fund the show, do check out the Patreon at www.patreon.com/meeplesyrup. So subscribe at any level, and there's lots of cool stuff that is coming out, like audio podcasts and stuff that we're going to have going on that we don't even know yet. We're just dreaming it up, dreaming the dream.
Please check out the podcast. The next episode will be Jay's Failing Faster episode will be on Monday. We just had up our Dissecting Pandemic, I believe was the last one. And we should be available on pretty much every platform at this point. You can get our RSS feed, but I try to make it so you don't have to do that. So it doesn't matter if you're Android or iPhone. I probably have a platform that we're on. And so I'd love it if you could subscribe to any of those.
Mm-hmm. And we did run a little contest, and we're going to try some of these out. What do you think, Erica? I mean, there's a really appropriate sign-off one here that Sean Howard suggested. It's, may your workers be fed and your zombies dead. Good night.
Hey, that's appropriate right now.
It's appropriate for today, but I don't know if that's I don't know if that's like their forever sign-off.
Not forever, but good for Julie.
I do like this one, though. May your syrup never run. Although that's kind of negative. Like, we like our syrup when it runs.
That is like... I feel like we just
may your syrup never run dry.
Run dry. May your syrup always run plentifully.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a questionably negative approach.
Right. Yeah. So that's Scott Rogers. Chris Leader said, "Syrup you all later," because he likes the puns.
It's kind of cute. The question is though, delivery on that one. Not everyone can deliver that line.
Let's go down and see
later.
Syrup y'all later.
Ones that other people said. Elizabeth Hargraves said, "Stay sweet, Meeps."
Stay sweet, Meeps. Oh my God, Jesse should do that one. I can totally hear Jesse saying that one.
Yeah. Oh, Adam, who's listening right now, said, "Don't say anything. Just literally have the sound of sizzling breakfast in the background."
I could put bacon noises against
You could use what is it? Phil from Golden Distribution does the baking cam every weekend. You could just probably like sample that.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And then let's see what here. Oh, Jesse Fernandez is also listening. Said short and sweet. See you later, peeps. That's a pretty good one.
Ooh.
Yeah, lots of good ones here. So we're gonna sign off with that tonight. It's like all of the sign offs at once, and we'll come up with something. We're gonna divide them up and vote on them, and then we're gonna let the patrons pick eventually. I think that's the idea. Jesse and Erica and I will.
Hang on.
Oh, you got one?
Oh, bacon sizzling.
So on that note,
I'll stop. Sorry.
We'll say goodbye on that note then. All right, everybody. We'll see you later, Meeps. Have a great week, and we'll be back next week with Kathleen Mercury, Chris Rowlands, and special content from live streaming at ProTO all weekend next week. See you later.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for watching the Meeple Syrup Show. If you'd like to help support our show and the podcast, please visit www.patreon.com/meeplesyrup. Thank you for your support.